Whatever happened to the principles of the 2010 Republican-controlled House of Representatives? You know, the one that vowed to block, kill, and slow down every single piece of Barack Obama's presidential agenda? Why is today's Republican Party abandoning its ideals and fighting to give Obama even more power? Let's rumble. Joining me for tonight's Big Picture Rumble are Brian Pruitt, director of RedState.com, TJ Helmstetter, director of media relations for the Progressive Change Campaign Committee, and Horace Cooper, attorney and senior fellow at the National Center for Public Policy Research. Welcome, guys.
Good evening.
Thank you for joining us. So why is the Republican Party abandoning this principle of if it's Obama's, we don't like it? I don't get it.
I think the Republican Party's showing leadership. They helped President Clinton get NAFTA passed back in the 90s.
The objection of Democrats. He only got 30 Democratic votes.
And I think it's very interesting how, you know, we hear that a day is a lifetime in politics. Last week, I was talking about how Nancy Pelosi controlled the president's legacy. Now it looks like Speaker Boehner and Majority Leader McConnell control his legacy. It's an interesting turn of events.
But why? TJ?
This is just a case of the president being on the wrong side of his own party. I mean, this is really a battle between the corporate part of the Democratic Party, which needs to be exercised, versus the progressive part of the Democratic Party, the Elizabeth Warren wing of the party.
Exercise with an O, not an E.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, the only thing I would say is good. The only thing I would say is the narrative was always oversimplified. It was never the Republican posture that if President Obama is for it, we must be against it. If Hitler likes milk, we're not going to come out against milk. It turns out trade promotion authority is a positive good in and of itself, and we're happy to see the President of the United States embrace that concept.
So you are in favor of our abandoning Article 3 of the Constitution?
Actually, this is completely and totally within the auspices of the authority of the House of Representatives and the Senate to decide how the actual implementation language is going to operate.
Article 3 is the judiciary.
No.
And Article 3, starts out saying that, all trials shall be...
This isn't about a trial. This is about setting up what the particular tariff
dispute resolution
arrangements.
groups are not American courts. They are corporate courts. We were just told we can't have country of origin labeling on meat by the WTO, and it wasn't an American court. It was a corporate court. It was the WTO.
And it is treated as if it were a tribunal for arbitration purposes, and that's the same way any of these others are. But the truth of the matter is, all of the various products that are covered by existing tariffs, those have to be changed by law, not by executive action. They have to be changed by law. And we're going to have a up or down vote on whether that's going to happen.
The importance is that Horace is right. The legislative branch retains its power to say yes or no to this Trans-Pacific Partnership. They absolutely retain their power in our system of government, and it's important.
They are giving away. They are saying we will not allow ourselves to filibuster this. We will not allow ourselves to amend this. The debate will be limited to 83 seconds per member. That's not retaining their power.
What you mentioned the interstate dispute settlement clauses. That's the clause in this trade bill that we know about that's egregious, that Elizabeth Warren has been calling attention to.
Violates Article 3 of the Constitution.
Exactly.
According to Bruce Fein,
we have no idea all the other garbage that's in this bill, because frankly, members of Congress are only allowed into a locked room to flip through it without taking any notes or bringing any staff in. Yeah. So who knows what else is in here. Fast track needs to stop, because we need to slow down the process of passing this bill.
Is this not just ultimately the final corporate takeover
The Supreme Court has consistently held
democracy?
The Supreme Court has consistently held that any other non-Article 3 court's decision or judgment is not final unless an Article 3 judge issues it. What we're doing with this process is simply setting up an arbitration council, and we do that in a whole number of other contexts.
An arbitration council that can overturn American law.
No, absolutely
not. Congress had to go back last week and pass a law doing away with our country of origin labeling for meat, because the WTO said, sorry, you can't have that.
When it comes to trade, the Republican Party is being consistent. The Republican Party saved President Clinton. The Republican Party saved President Clinton back in the 90s, and it looks like if something gets passed, the Republican Party is going to save another Democratic president.
Progressives are being consistent too. The problem is that we have corporate Democrats against progressive Democrats, and progressive Democrats understand that TPP is bad for workers, it's bad for consumers, and it's bad for our democracy because of these interstate dispute settlement clauses.
You're distorting the WTO process. The truth of the matter is, if we disregard the WTO findings, no one goes to prison, no one is arrested. There are
huge fines.
There are fines that we have contractually agreed to pay in the event that the Arbitration Council rules
and
a
I'm
certain
saying
way.
let's not sign any more of those contracts because we always get screwed. We've lost 50,000 factories, 60,000 factories since 2000. We're losing factories at the rate of 14 a day right now.
You don't care about how many factories you lose.
We have a $500 billion trade deficit. Our trade deficit went up after we signed the South Korea deal. Our trade deficit went up after we signed the NAFTA deal. Our trade deficit went up after we signed the Colombia deal. Every single one of these deals has increased our trade deficit, reduced our exports, increased our imports. We don't make anything in this country anymore.
Under this administration,
1/7 of all assets in this country are now owned by foreigners.
Under this administration, with the cheerleading from progressives, you guys have run manufacturing, what relic remains in this country, to the ground. Let's start with EPA. You're glad with every single regulation that they put forward that puts a chokehold. When you tell me you don't like it.
Let's talk about the car industry, okay, which President Obama saved. Let's talk about jobs that President Bush sent overseas and that, frankly, President Clinton sent overseas, okay? The shipping of manufacturing jobs in this country overseas did not start with President Obama, but it needs to end now. And last week's vote and Nancy Pelosi's shift on TPP was a major victory for progressives, and now we need to make sure that we continue to slow this process down and ultimately stop TPP in order to save American jobs.
Handing Chrysler over to foreigners, lock, stock, and barrel, that's what you guys are proud of? Divesting all of the owners who were shareholders in General Motors and giving that to the UAW, that's what you're proud of?
That's exactly what you're doing, Romney wanted.
What you're doing, and it was wrong. And it was wrong.
It has worked.
Manufacturing has left in places where there's bad democratic policies. Let's talk about South Carolina. South Carolina,
it's left all over the United States.
South Carolina, where a Republican female minority governor just announced a brand new Volvo manufacturing facility. It's
great. So all the profits go to Sweden.
Republican policies are bringing manufacturing back.
Manufacturing
and how much are those workers making at that facility?
Are they making
UAW wages?
$15 an hour.
They're making it double or triple minimum wage.
Can they
and
raise
they're
a
getting
family?
benefits that are valuable. And in fact, it's this idea that you progressives have that you can pick who the employers ought to be that's been destructive. What Volvo has figured out...
pick the rules of the game of trade and commerce.
What Volvo has figured out is that to follow the rules in Sweden that progressives have taken over are too onerous, and so let's come to America and do it. All that you're going to have happen is if we follow
Volvo
this
is not making cars
mentality.
for export here. They're making cars. They're not making cars for export here. Neither
Yes,
does Honda. Neither does Toyota.
Yes, they do.
No, they make cars for the domestic market. That's the whole point of manufacturing in the United States. Yeah, they're not making them here for export to Sweden. They make Volvos in Sweden. They're not going to stop making Volvos in Sweden.
Actually, they sell more outside of Europe than
of course,
they sell.
Sweden's a little tiny country.
No. I said outside of Europe, outside of the EU. They sell more outside of the EU.
Well, each country has its own preferred. You know, in Germany, you see BMWs and Volkswagen.
This is an issue that I've been quite interested in. If they were to sell the margin that they sell, they couldn't profitably do so in Europe.
Let me just get this straight. You're suggesting that the loss of manufacturing jobs is not the result of 35 years of insane trade policies, that the loss of manufacturing jobs is because we're not letting the Cuyahoga River catch on fire, we're not killing Lake Erie because we're starting to enforce environmental regulations. Do I get that right?
Well, what I do know is that we haven't seen, what we haven't seen is a growth in manufacturing in all of the places that have been impacted by the wonderful EPA rules that you guys love.
Anywhere in the United States, and it's a consequence of
Clean Air Act,
trade.
the Clean Water Act.
More of tonight's Big Picture Rumble after the break.